The bullet shattered the lantern 6 inches from Victoria Keller's head, spraying kerosene across the canvas walls of her tent as 3 riders circled her claim in the pre-dawn darkness of an April morning in 1878. She dove for the Winchester propped against her bedroll, her heart hammering against her ribs as another shot tore through the fabric above her. The men were shouting now, their voices rough with whiskey and malice, demanding she come out with her hands up or burn inside. Victoria had spent 8 months working this claim in the hills outside Egar, Arizona, 8 months of back-breaking labor in sun and rain, and she would be damned if she let anyone take it from her without a fight. She crawled to the tent opening and peered through the gap. 3 silhouettes on horseback wheeled around her campsite, their forms barely visible in the gray light before dawn. One of them threw something that landed with a thud against her tent. The acrid smell of coal oil hit her nostrils immediately. They were going to burn her out. Victoria grabbed her leather satchel containing her claim papers, stuffed it inside her shirt, and burst through the tent flap with the rifle raised. "Get off my property!" she screamed, firing a warning shot over their heads. The riders scattered momentarily, then regrouped 30 yards away. One of them laughed, a sound that made her blood run cold. "That ain't your property no more, sweetheart. Judge Morrison signed it over to the Copper Valley Mining Company this morning. You got until sunup to clear out." "That's a lie. This claim is registered in my name at the territorial office in Prescott. I got the papers right here." "Papers don't mean nothing when you got no witness and no husband to speak for you," another rider called out. "A woman got no business working a mine anyway. You should have stayed back east where you belong." Victoria's finger tightened on the trigger, but she knew shooting one of them would only bring a rope around her own neck. Women had even fewer rights than she wanted to admit in Arizona territory, and killing a white man would see her hanged regardless of the circumstances. She lowered the rifle slowly, her mind racing through her limited options. Behind her, she could hear the crackle of flames. They had lit her tent. "I want to see these papers from Judge Morrison," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Show me proof this claim belongs to someone else." The lead rider walked his horse closer. In the growing light, Victoria could make out a thin face with a scar running from temple to jaw. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying I want to see documentation. That's my legal right." He spat tobacco juice on the ground near her feet. "Your legal right is whatever we say it is. Now you can walk away peaceful with your skin intact. Or we can make this real unpleasant. Your choice, Miss Keller." The fact that he knew her name sent a chill down her spine. This was no random claim jumping. Someone had done their research, found out she was alone and unprotected, and sent these men to take what she had worked so hard to build. The mine shaft behind her tent had finally started showing color last week. Real color. Gold-bearing quartz that could make her wealthy enough to never depend on any man again. That's what this was about. Someone had found out about her strike. Behind her, the tent collapsed in a shower of sparks. Everything she owned, except the clothes on her back and the papers in her satchel, was gone. 8 months of provisions, her tools, her books, her mother's silver locket. Victoria felt tears of rage burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of these men. "I'm going to town," she said flatly. "I'm going to the sheriff and showing him my claim papers. Then we'll see whose property this is." The scarred man shrugged. "You do that. But when you get back, there'll be armed guards posted here. And if you set foot on Copper Valley property again, you'll be shot for trespassing. Now get." Victoria turned and started walking down the trail toward Eager, 5 miles away. The Winchester was heavy in her hands, her boots crunching on the rocky soil. The sun was starting to rise over the mountains to the east, painting the desert in shades of pink and gold. It should have been beautiful, but all Victoria felt was a cold fury burning in her chest. She had left Philadelphia 2 years ago after her father died, leaving nothing but gambling debts. She had worked as a laundress, a cook, and finally saved enough to file her own mining claim. She had learned to swing a pickaxe, to timber a shaft, to pan for gold in the freezing creek water, and now someone thought they could just take it all away because she was a woman alone. The walk to Eager took her 2 hours. By the time she reached the main street, the town was waking up. A freight wagon rattled past, and she could smell bread baking at the boarding house. Victoria's legs ached, and her throat was parched, but she went straight to the sheriff's office. The door was locked. A hand-lettered sign read, "Back at noon, Deputy Thompson." Victoria wanted to scream. Instead, she sat down on the wooden bench outside the office and waited. The sun climbed higher, and the heat began to build. A few townspeople passed by, giving her curious glances. A woman sitting alone in dusty men's clothing with a rifle across her knees was not a common sight even in a rough mining town like Eagar. "You look like you could use some water." Victoria looked up to see a tall man in his mid-20s standing a few feet away holding out a canteen. He wore faded denim pants, dusty boots, and a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up. A well-worn hat shaded his face, but she could see kind eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. A gun belt hung low on his hips, but his hands were relaxed, non-threatening. "Thank you," she said, taking the canteen and drinking deeply. The water was cool and tasted faintly of metal. She handed it back. "I'm waiting for the sheriff." "Deputy Thompson won't be back until this afternoon. He rode out to the Simpson Ranch about a property dispute." The man sat down on the bench beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Name's Tyler Jackson. I run cattle up in the high country, but I'm in town picking up supplies. Couldn't help but notice you look like you've had a rough morning." Victoria studied him for a moment. He had an honest face, weathered by sun and wind, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. His dark hair curled slightly at his collar, and when he pushed his hat back, she could see he was watching her with genuine concern, not the predatory interest she had learned to recognize in some men. "Victoria Keller," she said. "And yes, you could say that. Some men burned me out of my claim this morning, said they had papers giving it to some mining company. I came to report it to the sheriff, but apparently that will have to wait." Tyler's expression darkened. "Let me guess. Copper Valley Mining Company." Victoria straightened. "How did you know?" "Because they've been doing the same thing to small claim holders all over this territory for the past year. They find out someone's hit a good vein, then they use their lawyers and their connections to steal it legal-like. Judge Morrison is in their pocket. He'll sign anything they put in front of him as long as the price is right." "That's corrupt," Victoria said hotly. "There must be someone who can stop them." Tyler gave her a sad smile. "Welcome to Arizona territory, Miss Keller. The law tends to favor whoever has the most money and the most guns. How good is your claim? Be honest." Victoria hesitated, then decided she had nothing to lose by telling the truth. "I hit a vein of gold-bearing quartz last week. High grade. Maybe the richest strike in this area in the past 5 years." Tyler let out a low whistle. "Then they're not going to let it go easy. They'll have armed guards up there by now, just like they did with the Henderson brothers' claim in the Morrison place. No relation to the judge, by the way. Pure coincidence? Or maybe the judge took extra pleasure in signing away a claim from someone with his own name? So what am I supposed to do? Just walk away and let them steal 8 months of my work?" "I didn't say that." Tyler leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I said they won't let it go easy, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. You got your claim papers?" Victoria pulled the leather satchel from inside her shirt. The papers were slightly damp with sweat, but intact. Tyler examined them carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These are solid," he said finally. "Properly filed, properly witnessed. The problem is going to be proving they're legitimate when Judge Morrison produces his paperwork saying otherwise. It'll be your word against his, and pardon me for being blunt, but a woman's word doesn't carry much weight in territorial court." "I know," Victoria said bitterly. "They made that very clear this morning." Tyler handed the papers back. "I might be able to help you if you're willing to trust a stranger. I've been looking for a way to take down Copper Valley for a while now. They ran my uncle off his claim 2 years ago, and he died last winter without a penny to his name. a good man who worked hard all his life, and they destroyed him for their profit. Victoria met his eyes. What kind of help are you talking about? First, we need to get you somewhere safe. You can't stay in town where they can find you easily. My ranch is about 20 miles north of here, up in the White Mountains. It's remote and defensible. You can stay there while we figure out our next move. I can't just run away. That claim is my whole future. You won't do your future any good if you're dead, Tyler said bluntly, and those men who ran you off this morning will be back looking for you once they realize you came to town. Copper Valley doesn't like loose ends. At least at my place, you'll be safe while we plan how to fight back. Victoria wanted to argue, but she was exhausted, homeless, and nearly out of options. And there was something about Tyler Jackson that made her want to trust him. Maybe it was foolish, maybe she would regret it. But right now, he was offering her the only lifeline she had. All right, she said, but I'm not giving up on my claim, no matter what it takes. Tyler stood and offered her his hand. I wouldn't expect you to. Come on, my horse is at the livery. We can get you a mount and be out of town within the hour. They walked together down the dusty street. Victoria noticed how Tyler kept himself positioned between her and the other townspeople, a subtle but protective gesture. At the livery stable, he negotiated for a second horse, a sturdy bay mare that looked like she could handle rough country. The stable owner gave Victoria a curious look but didn't ask questions when Tyler paid in silver coins. We'll take the back trail, Tyler said as they rode out of town. It's longer but less traveled. I don't want anyone reporting which direction we went. The ride into the mountains took most of the day. As they climbed higher, the desert scrub gave way to juniper and pine. The air grew cooler and smelled of resin. Victoria had been this direction before when she first came to the territory, but she had never traveled this far into the high country. The landscape was beautiful, all red rock and green forest against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Tyler rode easily, clearly comfortable in the saddle. He pointed out landmarks and told her about the area, his voice low and pleasant. This country can be rough, but it's honest. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor, man or woman. It treats everyone the same. I always liked that about it. Is that why you came here? Victoria asked. Part of it. I grew up in Texas, worked on my father's ranch until he died. My older brother inherited everything, and we didn't exactly see eye to eye on how things should be run. So I took my share of the cattle and headed west. Been here 5 years now. Do you ever regret it? Tyler considered the question. Sometimes I miss my mother and my younger sister, but no, I don't regret the choice. Out here, a man can make something of himself through hard work and determination. I imagine that's why you came too. Something like that, Victoria said. After my father died, there was nothing left for me in Philadelphia. My mother passed when I was 16, and I had no siblings. I could have married, I suppose, but all the men who courted me just wanted someone to keep their house and bear their children. I wanted more than that. Nothing wrong with wanting more, Tyler said. Takes courage to go after it. Though, most people just settle for what they're given. They rode in companionable silence for a while. Victoria found herself studying Tyler when she thought he was not looking. He sat his horse like he was born to it, relaxed but alert. There was a quiet strength about him that was reassuring. And he was handsome, she admitted to herself in a rough-hewn sort of way. Not the polished elegance of the Philadelphia gentleman she had known, but something more genuine. As the sun began to set, they crested a ridge, and Victoria saw Tyler's ranch spread out in the valley below. It was modest but well kept, with a sturdy log cabin, a barn, and several corrals. Cattle grazed on the hillside, and she could see the silver thread of a creek running through the property. It's not much, Tyler said, but it's mine. Well, mine and the bank's. I've got about 3 years left on the note. It's beautiful, Victoria said honestly. You've built something to be proud of. They rode down to the cabin as twilight settled over the valley. Tyler helped her dismount and showed her where to water her horse. A lean, older man with graying hair came out of the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. This is Charlie Morton, Tyler said. He's worked with me since I started this place. Charlie, this is Miss Victoria Keller. She'll be staying with us for a while. Charlie nodded respectfully. Madam, I'll get the spare room ready." "Thank you," Victoria said. "I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble at all," Tyler assured her. "Come on, let's get you inside. You must be starving." The cabin was simple but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and two smaller bedrooms. Tyler had Charlie set up the spare room while he cooked a meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits. Victoria sat at the rough wooden table and watched him move around the kitchen with easy competence. "You're a good cook," she said when they sat down to eat. "Had to learn. Can't afford to hire a cook, and a man gets tired of his own bad cooking real quick." Tyler smiled at her across the table. "Besides, my mother made sure all her children knew how to fend for themselves. She said it was practical." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Is," Tyler corrected himself. "Last letter I got, she was doing well. My sister got married last year to a rancher near Austin. Mother went to live with them." They talked while they ate, sharing stories about their pasts, their families, their dreams. Victoria found herself relaxing for the first time since the attack that morning. There was something comfortable about Tyler's presence, something that made her feel safe despite everything that had happened. After dinner, Tyler pulled out a map and spread it on the table. "All right, let's talk about your claim. Show me exactly where it is." Victoria pointed to the location in the hills east of Egar. Tyler studied the map, his expression thoughtful. "The thing about Copper Valley Mining Company is that they operate just barely within the law. They find corrupt officials like Judge Morrison, they file paperwork that looks legitimate on the surface, and they use intimidation to keep people from fighting back. But if we can prove their claim to your property is fraudulent, we might be able to get a higher court to overturn it." "How do we do that?" Victoria asked. "We need to get to Prescott and file a complaint with the territorial governor's office. It's a long shot, but Governor Fremont has been making noise about cleaning up corruption in the mining districts. If we can get your case in front of someone honest, we might have a chance." "Prescott is 2 weeks' travel from here," Victoria said. "What about my claim in the meantime?" "They'll work it. Take all the gold." Tyler nodded grimly. "That's the risk. But if you go back there now, they'll either kill you or run you off again. At least if we can get an injunction from the territorial court, it might freeze operations until the case is settled." Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Everything she had worked for was slipping away, and there seemed to be no good options. She felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. Tyler had moved closer, his expression full of sympathy. "I know this seems overwhelming right now, but you're not alone in this fight anymore. I meant what I said about helping you. We'll figure this out together." Victoria looked up at him, at the sincerity in those whiskey-colored eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. She barely knew this man, but he was offering her help when she had no one else. And more than that, he was treating her like an equal, not like a helpless woman who needed to be rescued. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "You don't know me. This isn't your fight." Tyler was quiet for a moment, because it's the right thing to do. And because someone should have helped my uncle when Copper Valley came after him. Maybe if they had, he would still be alive. He paused, then added, "And because I can see how much this means to you. You've got fire in you, Victoria Keller. The kind of determination that deserves to be rewarded, not crushed." Victoria felt tears threatening again, but this time they were not from anger or despair. They were from gratitude and something else she could not quite name. "Thank you," she whispered. Tyler squeezed her shoulder gently, then stepped back. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow we'll start planning our trip to Prescott. Charlie and I need to make arrangements for the ranch while we're gone." "You're coming with me?" "Of course. You think I'm going to let you make that journey alone? The trail between here and Prescott can be dangerous, and besides, you'll need someone to back up your testimony." Victoria stood, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Tyler was several inches taller than her, broad-shouldered and solid. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this. Let's just focus on getting your claim back first. We can worry about repayment later." Tyler smiled, and Victoria felt her heart skip unexpectedly. "Good night, Victoria." "Good night, Tyler." She went to the spare room which Charlie had prepared with clean sheets and a quilt. The bed was more comfortable than her bedroll had been, but Victoria lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, she had been alone in the world, working her claim and dreaming of the future. Now her claim was stolen, her possessions were gone, and she was hiding at a stranger's ranch, but she was not alone anymore. Tyler Jackson had offered her not just shelter, but genuine help, and the way he looked at her made her feel things she had not felt in a very long time, maybe ever. Victoria had been courted by men in Philadelphia, but their interest had always felt transactional. They wanted a wife to serve a purpose. Tyler seemed to see her as a person, as someone worth fighting for. She finally fell asleep thinking about his smile and the gentle weight of his hand on her shoulder. The next morning, Victoria woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed quickly in the same dusty clothes from yesterday, realizing with chagrin that they were the only clothes she owned now. Everything else had burned with her tent. When she came into the main room, Tyler was at the stove and Charlie was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. Both men stood when she entered, a gesture of courtesy that surprised her. "Morning," Tyler said. "I hope you slept well. Coffee?" "Yes, please." Victoria accepted the cup gratefully. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what she needed. Over breakfast, they discussed the logistics of the trip to Prescott. Charlie would stay behind to look after the ranch and the cattle. Tyler wanted to leave as soon as possible, ideally within 2 days. "First, though, we need to get you properly outfitted," Tyler said. "You'll need more clothes, supplies for the trail, a proper bedroll. I'm going into town this morning to pick up some things anyway. You should come with me, but we'll need to be careful. If Copper Valley has men watching for you, we don't want to make it easy for them." "Maybe I should stay here," Victoria suggested. "Actually, hiding in plain sight might work better. If you're dressed differently, most people won't recognize you." Tyler paused, looking thoughtful. "Charlie, didn't your late wife leave some things in the trunk in the barn?" Charlie nodded. "She did. About the same size as Miss Keller, I reckon. There's a couple of dresses that might work." "Would you mind if Victoria borrowed them?" Tyler asked gently. "Mary would have liked that," Charlie said. "She always believed in helping folks when they needed it. I'll fetch the trunk." An hour later, Victoria stood in front of the small mirror in her room, hardly recognizing herself. The dress Charlie had brought was simple calico in a blue that matched her eyes, with a modest neckline and long sleeves. It fit reasonably well, though it was a bit loose in the waist. She had brushed out her dark blonde hair and pinned it up in a more ladylike style than the practical braid she usually wore. With a borrowed bonnet and shawl, she looked like any respectable woman going to town with her husband. The thought made her blush for reasons she did not want to examine too closely. Tyler's reaction when she emerged was gratifying. He stared at her for a long moment, then cleared his throat. "You look very nice, Miss Keller." "Thank you. And please, call me Victoria. After everything, I think we're past formalities." "Victoria, then. And I'm Tyler." He offered his arm. "Shall we go to town, Miss Keller?" She laughed despite herself and took his arm. "I thought we were past formalities, Mr. Jackson." The ride to Eager was pleasant in the morning cool. They talked easily, and Victoria found herself noticing little things about Tyler. The way he handled his horse with unconscious skill, the thoughtful way he considered her questions before answering, the small smile that played at the corners of his mouth when she said something that amused him. In town, Tyler proved to be a thoughtful shopping companion. At the general store, he helped her select practical clothing for the trail, 2 more dresses for good and personal necessities. He was careful to consult her preferences and never once suggested she did not need something she wanted. When she protested about the cost, he waved her off. "Consider it an investment. Once we get your claim back, you can pay me back with interest if you want, but right now you need these things and I've got the money to spare." At the hardware store, Tyler bought ammunition and supplies for the trip. While he was talking to the clerk, Victoria noticed 2 men across the street watching them. One of them was the scarred man from her claim. Her blood ran cold. She moved closer to Tyler and touched his arm. "Don't look now, but the man who burned me out yesterday is across the street. He's watching us." Tyler's expression did not change, but she felt him tense. He finished his transaction calmly, then offered her his arm again. "Let's go to the restaurant for lunch. Act natural." They walked down the street at a leisurely pace, but Victoria was intensely aware of the two men following them at a distance. At the restaurant, Tyler chose a table by the window where he could watch the street. He sat with his back to the wall, his hand resting near his gun. "Do you think they recognize me?" Victoria asked quietly. "Hard to say. You look different enough that they might not be sure, but they're definitely interested." Tyler studied the street. "Finish your lunch, but don't rush. We're just a couple having a meal in town, nothing suspicious." The food tasted like ashes in Victoria's mouth, but she forced herself to eat. Across from her, Tyler maintained a relaxed demeanor, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. When they finally left the restaurant, the two men were gone. "Maybe they gave up," Victoria suggested hopefully. "Maybe," Tyler said, but he did not sound convinced. "Let's collect our packages and head back to the ranch." They were loading their purchases into the saddlebags when the scarred man stepped out of the alley beside the livery stable. He had a gun in his hand pointed at Tyler's chest. "Well, well, Miss Keller, isn't it? Thought that was you under that pretty bonnet. And who might this be, your husband?" "I'm a friend," Tyler said calmly. "And you're making a mistake, mister. Put the gun away before someone gets hurt." "The only one who's going to get hurt is you if you don't step away from the lady. She and I have business to discuss." "I don't have anything to say to you," Victoria said, her voice shaking with anger and fear. "You burned me out illegally and stole my claim. I'm going to the authorities." The scarred man laughed. "You already tried that, sweetheart. Sheriff wasn't in, was he? And by the time he gets back, we'll have all the paperwork filed nice and legal. Judge Morrison is real efficient when he wants to be." "Then I'll go over his head," Victoria shot back. "I'll go to the territorial governor if I have to." "That's a long trip for a woman alone. Lots of things can happen on the trail to Prescott. Accidents, Indian attacks. A person could disappear and no one would ever know what happened to them." Tyler moved so fast Victoria barely saw it. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had knocked the gun from the scarred man's hand and had him pressed against the stable wall with his forearm across his throat. "You listen to me," Tyler said in a voice cold as ice. "Miss Keller is under my protection. If anything happens to her, if she so much as gets a splinter, I will come looking for you and everyone you work for, and when I find you, you'll wish you had never heard her name. Do you understand me?" The scarred man's face was turning purple, but he managed to nod. Tyler released him and stepped back, his hand hovering near his gun. The scarred man coughed and gasped for air, rage and fear warring in his expression. "You're making a big mistake, friend. Copper Valley doesn't forget." "Neither do I," Tyler said. "Now get out of here before I decide to haul you to the sheriff myself for assault and attempted theft." The scarred man retrieved his gun from the dust and backed away, never taking his eyes off Tyler. When he reached the corner, he turned and hurried out of sight. Victoria realized she had been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky exhale. That was incredible. Where did you learn to move like that? "Had to learn to handle myself growing up with an older brother who liked to brawl." Tyler's expression softened as he looked at her. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine, but Tyler, he threatened you because of me. He threatened both of us, and I don't take kindly to threats." Tyler took her hand, and Victoria felt the warmth of his palm against hers. "Victoria, I told you I was going to help you, and I meant it. These men are bullies and thieves. I'm not going to stand by and let them hurt you." Victoria looked up at him, at the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, and felt her heart turn over. She had been on her own for so long, had grown so used to fighting her battles alone, that Tyler's unwavering support felt like a revelation. Without thinking, she squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Tyler smiled, and for a moment they just stood there, hands clasped, looking at each other. Then a wagon rattled past and broke the spell. Tyler cleared his throat and released her hand. "We should get back to the ranch. I don't trust that man not to come back with reinforcements." They rode hard on the return journey, taking a different route than they had used that morning. Tyler kept checking behind them, but no one seemed to be following. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was setting and Victoria was exhausted. Over the next 2 days, they prepared for the trip to Prescott. Victoria helped where she could, learning to pack trail supplies and load saddlebags efficiently. She practiced shooting with her Winchester under Tyler's instruction, and he was impressed with her accuracy. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked, after she hit 6 bottles in a row. "My father taught me. He believed women should be able to protect themselves. It was one of the few things he did right." Victoria reloaded the rifle. "I've gotten even better since I came out here. A woman alone needs to know how to handle a gun." "That's the truth," Tyler agreed, "but you're not alone anymore." The statement hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Victoria looked at Tyler, at his earnest face and steady eyes, and felt something shift inside her. This was more than just gratitude, more than just relief at having help. She was starting to care about Tyler Jackson in a way that had nothing to do with her claim or her troubles. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. On their last evening before the journey, Tyler invited her to walk with him after dinner. They strolled along the creek that ran through his property, the water gurgling softly over stones. The air was cool and smelled of pine and earth. "This is my favorite time of day," Tyler said, "when the work is done and you can just enjoy the peace." "It's beautiful," Victoria agreed. "You've built a good life here, Tyler." "I've tried. It's lonely sometimes, though. This country is hard, and it's even harder when you don't have someone to share it with." He glanced at her. "Do you get lonely, Victoria? Working your claim by yourself?" "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I was willing to accept loneliness in exchange for independence. After watching my mother's life, seeing how she had to defer to my father in everything even when he was wrong, I swore I would never put myself in that position." "Not all marriages are like that," Tyler said quietly. "My parents were partners. They respected each other, made decisions together. That's the kind of marriage I always thought I would want, if I found the right woman." Victoria's heart was beating faster. What kind of woman would that be? Tyler stopped walking and turned to face her. In the twilight, his eyes were dark and serious. "Someone strong, someone who knows her own mind, someone who isn't afraid to take risks for what she believes in." He paused. "Someone like you, Victoria." Victoria felt her breath catch. They were standing very close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body in the cool evening air. "Tyler," she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. He reached up slowly, giving her time to step away if she wanted, and cupped her face in his hand. His palm was warm and slightly rough from work. "I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But Victoria, from the moment I saw you sitting outside that sheriff's office with your rifle and your determination, I felt something I've never felt before. And these past few days, getting to know you, have only made those feelings stronger." "What feelings?" Victoria asked, though she thought she knew. "I'm falling in love with you," Tyler said simply. "I know it's crazy. I know this might not be what you want to hear right now with everything else you're dealing with, but I needed to tell you the truth before we leave tomorrow. Whatever happens in Prescott, whatever happens with your claim, I want you to know how I feel." Victoria's mind was racing. She should be cautious. She should protect her heart. She had known this man for less than a week. But when she looked at Tyler, when she thought about his kindness and his strength and the way he treated her as an equal, she could not deny her own feelings. "I feel it too," she admitted. "I've been trying not to because it seemed impossible. But Tyler, I care about you more than I should, more than is probably wise." Tyler's smile was radiant. "Then be unwise with me, Victoria. Let's see where this goes." He leaned down slowly, and Victoria rose on her toes to meet him. Their lips touched softly at first, a gentle exploration, then deepened into something more passionate. Victoria's hands came up to grip his shoulders, and she felt his arms go around her waist, pulling her close. The kiss was everything she had imagined and more, sweet and fierce and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Tyler rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the first day," he confessed. "I'm glad you did," Victoria said, smiling. "Though we should probably figure out how to get my claim back before we start planning our future together." Tyler laughed and kissed her again quickly. "Fair point, one battle at a time." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and Victoria felt lighter than she had in weeks. Yes, she still faced a difficult fight ahead. Yes, there were no guarantees they would win. But she was not facing it alone anymore. And she had found something she had not even known she was looking for. She had found someone who saw her strength and valued it. Someone who wanted to stand beside her rather than in front of her. The journey to Prescott began at dawn. Charlie wished them luck and promised to keep the ranch running smoothly until they returned. Victoria wore her new trail clothes, practical split skirts, and a sturdy jacket, with her Winchester in the saddle scabbard and her claim papers safely tucked in her saddlebag. Tyler had packed enough supplies for 3 weeks, accounting for delays. The trail wound through varied terrain, from pine forests to high desert mesas. Tyler set a steady pace, not pushing too hard but covering good distance each day. At night, they made camp under the stars, and Tyler taught her trail skills she had not known before. How to start a fire with damp wood, how to find water in dry country, how to read weather signs in the clouds. They talked endlessly, sharing stories and dreams and opinions on everything from politics to poetry. Victoria discovered that Tyler was surprisingly well read for a cattleman. His mother had taught all her children to value education, and he had brought books with him from Texas. Victoria, in turn, told him about her life in Philadelphia, about the constraints of society there, and the freedom she had found in the West despite its hardships. "Do you miss it?" Tyler asked one night as they sat by the fire. "The civilization, the culture?" "I miss the libraries," Victoria admitted, "and the symphony orchestra, but I don't miss the social obligations, the constant judgment, the way women were expected to be ornamental rather than useful. Out here, I can be myself. Even with all the problems, even with men like those from Copper Valley, at least I have a chance to succeed or fail on my own merits." "You'll succeed," Tyler said with quiet confidence. "You're too stubborn to do anything else." Victoria laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I can give. Stubborn people are the ones who change the world." They were 5 days into the journey when they encountered their first real trouble. They had stopped at a creek to water the horses when Victoria noticed fresh tracks in the mud, boot prints, several sets, and they were recent. "Tyler," she said quietly, pointing. He examined the tracks, his expression grim. 4 men, maybe 5. Could be miners heading to Prescott, but we should be careful. They mounted up quickly and continued on, but now both of them were alert and tense. An hour later, they rounded a bend in the trail and found 5 men blocking the path. Victoria recognized one of them immediately, the scarred man from Egar. "Well, this is convenient," the scarred man said, resting his hand on his gun. "Saved us the trouble of tracking you all the way to Prescott. Boss wants those claim papers, Miss Keller. Hand them over, and we'll let you ride away." "Like hell," Victoria said, reaching for her rifle. "I wouldn't do that," another man said, pointing to the hillside above them. Victoria looked up and saw 2 more men with rifles trained on them from higher ground. They were surrounded. Tyler's jaw was tight, but he kept his hands visible. "This is a mistake. You attack us on a public road, you'll have the territorial marshal after you." "Only if anyone knows about it. This is lonely country. People disappear all the time." The scarred man walked his horse closer. "Now, Miss Keller, the papers. Last chance." Victoria's mind raced. If she gave them the papers, she had no case, but if she refused, they were likely to be shot. She looked at Tyler and saw the same calculation in his eyes. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. "Trust me," his expression said. "All right," Victoria said, dismounting slowly. "The papers are in my saddlebag. Let me get them." She walked to her horse, opened the saddlebag, and reached inside. Her fingers closed around the grip of her revolver. In one fluid motion, she spun and fired at the man closest to her. The shot hit him in the shoulder, and he toppled from his horse with a yell. At the same instant, Tyler drew and fired at the scarred man, hitting him in the chest. Then chaos erupted. Bullets sang through the air. Tyler's horse reared, and he fought to control it while returning fire. Victoria ducked behind her horse and aimed at the men on the hillside. She hit one in the leg, and he fell, sliding down the slope. "Victoria, to me!" Tyler shouted. He had dismounted and taken cover behind a large rock. Victoria grabbed her rifle and ran, bullets kicking up dust around her feet. She threw herself down beside Tyler, her heart hammering. "Reload!" Tyler barked, firing methodically at the remaining attackers. Victoria's hands shook as she fed cartridges into her Winchester, but her training held. She got the rifle loaded and joined Tyler in returning fire. The gunfight lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. When the smoke cleared, 3 of the attackers were dead, 2 were wounded and fleeing, and the rest had scattered. Victoria was shaking, her ears ringing from the gunfire. "Are you hurt?" Tyler asked urgently, checking her over. "No, I'm fine. Are you?" "Just a graze." He showed her a shallow cut on his arm where a bullet had passed. "We need to move. Those men who ran will likely come back with reinforcements." They caught their spooked horses and rode hard for the next several hours, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the ambush site. Finally, as night was falling, Tyler deemed it safe enough to stop. They made a cold camp with no fire, not wanting to advertise their position. Victoria sat with her back against a tree, still trembling with reaction. She had never shot at a person before today. The reality of it was different than she had imagined, harder, more brutal. Tyler sat down beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. "You did good back there. You kept your head and you protected yourself. I'm proud of you." "I shot a man," Victoria whispered. "I might have killed him." "You defended your life. There's a difference." Tyler tightened his arm around her. "Victoria, those men were going to kill us and take your papers. You did what you had to do. Don't feel guilty about surviving." "I know you're right. It's just hard." They sat in silence for a while, drawing comfort from each other's presence. Finally, Tyler spoke again. "This proves how serious Copper Valley is about keeping your claim. They were willing to commit murder to stop you from getting to Prescott, which means that claim of yours must be even more valuable than we thought." "Or they're just greedy and evil," Victoria said bitterly. "That too." Tyler kissed the top of her head gently. "But we're going to win this, Victoria. I promise you. We're going to get your claim back, and we're going to make them pay for what they've done." The determination in his voice steadied her. Victoria turned in his arms and kissed him, needing the connection and the reassurance. Tyler responded immediately, deepening the kiss until she felt her fear and shock melting away, replaced by warmth and desire. When they finally pulled apart, Tyler's eyes were dark with emotion. "I love you, Victoria Keller. I know this is fast, and I know you might not feel the same way yet, but I need you to know. I love you, and I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you safe and get you justice." Victoria's heart felt like it might burst. "I love you too, Tyler Jackson. I didn't want to. I tried not to, but I do. And when this is all over, I want us to have a future together, if you still want that." "I want that more than anything," again Tyler said, and kissed her again. They continued their journey the next day, both of them watchful for more ambushes, but they saw no sign of pursuit. Either the surviving attackers had given up, or they were being more careful. 5 days later, they finally saw Prescott spread out in the valley below them. Prescott was the territorial capital, a real city compared to small towns like Eagar. It had proper streets, brick buildings, even sidewalks in some places. Tyler found them rooms at a respectable boarding house, separate rooms to preserve Victoria's reputation, though they spent every possible moment together. The next morning, they went to the territorial governor's office. It was an imposing building with columns and a flagpole flying the American flag. Inside, they were directed to the Office of Mining Claims, where a harried clerk listened to Victoria's story with growing interest. So you're saying Copper Valley Mining Company obtained fraudulent documentation from a territorial judge to steal your legally filed claim? The clerk asked. Yes, sir. I have my original claim papers here, properly witnessed and filed with the land office. I believe Judge Morrison in Eager was bribed to produce counterfeit documents giving my claim to Copper Valley. The clerk studied her papers carefully. These look legitimate to me, but you understand this is a serious accusation. You're essentially charging a sitting judge with corruption. I'm charging Copper Valley Mining Company with theft and fraud, Victoria said firmly. Judge Morrison's involvement is just part of their pattern. They've done this to other claim holders in the region. Tyler can testify to that. The clerk looked at Tyler, who nodded. My uncle lost his claim to Copper Valley 2 years ago under similar circumstances. He died in poverty while they extracted thousands of dollars in gold from land he had worked for years. Do you have documentation of your uncle's case? Some. He kept letters from Judge Morrison and from Copper Valley's lawyers. I brought them with me. Tyler pulled out a folder of yellowed letters. The clerk read through them, his frown deepening. Finally, he looked up. Wait here. I need to speak with the Territorial Attorney General. This is beyond my authority to handle. They waited for over an hour in the anteroom, watching clerks and officials come and go. Victoria felt her hope rising and falling with each passing minute. Finally, the clerk returned with an older gentleman in a well-cut suit. Miss Keller, I'm Attorney General Harrison. I've reviewed your claim papers and the documentation Mr. Jackson provided about his uncle's case. I'm prepared to file an injunction freezing all mining operations on your claim pending a full investigation. However, I need to be clear. This will likely lead to a protracted legal battle. Copper Valley has deep pockets and good lawyers. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared to fight for what's mine, Victoria said, for as long as it takes. Attorney General Harrison smiled slightly. Good. I admire your determination, Miss Keller. Too many people just roll over when powerful interests push them around. The West needs more people like you. He turned to his clerk. Draw up the injunction. I want it filed today and served on Copper Valley's offices by the end of the week. Also, prepare a formal complaint to the Territorial Judiciary Committee regarding Judge Morrison's conduct. If he's been selling decisions, I want him removed from the bench. The clerk hurried off. Harrison turned back to Victoria. This is going to take time, months possibly. Where will you stay in the meantime? Victoria glanced at Tyler, who stepped forward. Miss Keller will be staying at my ranch north of Eagar. She'll be safe there while the legal proceedings unfold. Very well, make sure we have your address so we can contact you when needed. Harrison shook both their hands. I'll be in touch soon with updates. And Miss Keller, one more thing. Be careful. If Copper Valley was willing to ambush you on the trail, they won't stop just because we filed some paperwork. Watch your back. They left the office feeling hopeful but cautious. The legal wheels were in motion, but Harrison was right about the danger. Copper Valley would not give up easily. Tyler suggested they stay in Prescott for a few more days to make sure the injunction was properly filed and served. They used the time to explore the city together. They walked through the main street, visited the library, and attended a concert at the town hall. For a few days, they could almost pretend they were just a couple courting normally, without threats and legal battles hanging over them. One evening, Tyler took her to a nice restaurant for dinner. Over dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. Victoria, I've been thinking about the future. Once this legal battle is over, once your claim is secure, what do you want to do? Victoria considered the question. I suppose I'll work the mine. Hire some help, extract the gold, try to build something permanent. Would you consider a partner in that venture? What kind of partner? Tyler's thumb stroked the back of her hand. The permanent kind. The kind who stands beside you through everything. The kind who shares your dreams and helps you build them. He paused. The kind you marry, Victoria. Victoria's breath caught. Tyler, are you proposing to me? Not officially, not yet. I know this might seem fast, but Victoria, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're strong and smart and brave, and I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. When this is all settled, when you have your claim back, and things are stable, I want to ask you properly. I want you to be my wife. I wanted you to know that so you could think about it." Victoria felt tears stinging her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I don't need to think about it, Tyler. My answer is yes. When the time is right, when we're not fighting for survival anymore, my answer will be yes." Tyler's smile was brilliant. He stood up, came around the table, and pulled her to her feet. Right there in the restaurant in front of all the other diners, he kissed her thoroughly. Victoria heard someone whistle and someone else clapped, but she did not care. She was wrapped in Tyler's arms, and for this moment everything was perfect. The injunction was served on Copper Valley Mining Company 3 days later. Tyler and Victoria got word from Attorney General Harrison that the company had been ordered to cease all operations on Victoria's claim pending the outcome of the legal proceedings. Guards would be posted by the territorial marshal to ensure compliance. "We can go home now," Tyler said, "and back to the ranch. We'll wait there for the next steps." The return journey felt different. They were still careful, still watchful, but there was a lightness between them now. They had declared their feelings, made their intentions clear. The future was uncertain in many ways, but in the ways that mattered most, it was set. They talked about what their life together might look like. Tyler explained that his ranch could support both cattle and mining operations. Victoria could work her claim while also helping with the ranch. They could build a larger house, maybe start a family someday if that was something Victoria wanted. "I never thought much about children when I was in Philadelphia," Victoria admitted. "Marriage seemed like a trap, and children seemed like just another obligation. But with you, Tyler, I can imagine it. I can imagine building a real partnership, raising children who grow up seeing their parents as equals." "That's all I want," Tyler said. "A partnership. Someone to share the burden and the joy. I think we could build something really good together, Victoria." They were 2 days from home when they encountered a lone rider on the trail. He was an older man with a badge pinned to his vest. He raised his hand in greeting as he approached. "You folks heading to Eagar?" he asked. "Near there," Tyler said cautiously. "Can we help you with something?" "I'm Deputy Marshal Warren. I've been posted to guard Miss Keller's claim per the territorial injunction. I was actually heading to Prescott to find you and let you know the situation." He looked at Victoria. "You must be Miss Keller." "I am." "What's the situation, Marshal?" "Well, when we served the injunction and ordered Copper Valley's men off the property, they didn't take it well. There was some shouting and threats, but they did leave. We've got 2 men posted there now to make sure they don't come back, but I wanted to warn you that Copper Valley's lawyer was making a lot of noise about appealing to federal court. This fight isn't over." "I didn't expect it would be," Victoria said, "but at least my claim is protected for now." "Yes, madam. There's one more thing you should know. Judge Morrison has been suspended pending an investigation into his conduct. Seems there were other irregularities besides your case. The Territorial Judiciary Committee is looking into several questionable decisions he made that all benefited mining companies at the expense of individual prospectors." Tyler and Victoria exchanged glances. "That's good news," Tyler said. "It is. Well, I'll let you folks get on your way. Just wanted to update you on the situation. If you need anything, send word to the Marshal's office in Prescott." Deputy Marshal Warren tipped his hat and rode on. When they finally reached Tyler's ranch, Charlie came out to greet them with obvious relief. "Thank goodness you're back safe. I was starting to worry." "We're fine, Charlie. Better than fine, actually." Tyler helped Victoria dismount, his hand lingering at her waist. "We got the injunction filed. Victoria's claim is protected." "That's wonderful news." Charlie noticed how close Tyler and Victoria were standing, how Tyler's hand stayed at her waist. His weathered face broke into a knowing smile. "I see there might be other good news, too?" Tyler grinned. "Charlie, you're looking at a man engaged to be married. Well, almost engaged. Soon to be engaged." "It's complicated," Victoria added with a laugh. "But yes, once everything is settled, Tyler and I are going to be married." Charlie shook both their hands enthusiastically. "That's the best news I've heard in years. Mary would have been so happy. She always said this ranch needed a woman's touch." That night, Victoria lay in bed in the spare room and thought about how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had lost her claim, found it again, fallen in love, and planned a future she had never imagined wanting. It was overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. There was a soft knock on her door. Victoria wrapped a shawl around her nightgown and opened it to find Tyler standing there, his hair damp from washing, his feet bare. "I'm sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to say goodnight properly." He looked suddenly uncertain. "And to make sure you're really all right with everything, with us. I don't want you to feel rushed or pressured." Victoria pulled him into the room and closed the door. "Tyler Jackson, I have never been more certain of anything. I love you. I want to marry you. And I'm tired of sleeping in separate rooms." Tyler's eyes widened. "Victoria, I don't want to compromise your reputation." "My reputation was compromised the moment I put on men's clothes and started working a mine claim alone. I don't care what people think anymore, Tyler. I care about you, about us, about building our life together, and I don't want to wait." She reached up and pulled his head down to kiss him. Tyler responded immediately, his arms going around her, pulling her close. The kiss was deep and passionate, full of all the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tyler rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back." "I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Tyler kissed her again, slowly, reverently, and Victoria felt her heart soar. This was right. This was what she wanted. Not the sanitized courtship she would have had in Philadelphia, but this raw, honest love with a man who saw her as an equal. They spent that night wrapped in each other's arms, talking and kissing and simply being together. It was not about passion alone, though there was plenty of that. It was about connection, about two people who had found something precious and were claiming it for themselves. The next morning, Victoria woke to find Tyler already dressed, sitting in the chair by the window watching her sleep. He smiled when he saw her eyes open. "Good morning, beautiful." Victoria stretched, feeling more content than she could ever remember. "Good morning. Have you been sitting there long?" "A while. I couldn't quite believe this was real. That you're here, that you're mine, that we're going to build a life together." Tyler came over and sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hand. "Victoria, I know we said we would wait to make things official until the legal matters were settled, but I don't want to wait anymore. Will you marry me? Right away, as soon as we can arrange it?" Victoria sat up, her heart pounding. "You really want to?" "I really do. I don't need a big wedding or a long engagement. I just need you as my wife, as my partner. What do you say?" "Yes," Victoria said, throwing her arms around his neck. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Egar. Charlie stood as Tyler's witness, and the minister's wife stood for Victoria. It was nothing like the elaborate society wedding Victoria might have had in Philadelphia, but it was perfect. She wore one of the dresses Charlie's late wife had left behind, simple white muslin with lace at the collar. Tyler wore his best clothes and looked so handsome that Victoria's breath caught when she saw him standing at the altar. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Tyler kissed her with such tenderness and joy that Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks. They were happy tears, tears of relief and love and hope for the future. After the ceremony, they returned to the ranch that was now officially Victoria's home too. Charlie had moved his things to the bunk in the barn, insisting that the newlyweds needed privacy in the main cabin. That night, Tyler carried Victoria over the threshold in the traditional way, both of them laughing. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jackson," Tyler said, setting her down gently. "Victoria Jackson," she said, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." They had a simple wedding supper that Charlie had prepared, then sent him off to the barn with their thanks. Alone together as husband and wife, Tyler and Victoria sat by the fire and talked about their future. "I was thinking," Tyler said, "once the legal case is fully resolved and you get your claim back permanently, we could expand operations. hire some miners to work the claim properly, invest the proceeds in improving the ranch. Within a few years, we could have something really substantial." "I'd like that," Victoria said. "But Tyler, I want to make sure we're true partners in this. I don't want my claim to just become an extension of your ranch. I want us to build something together where we both have equal say." Tyler pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "That's exactly what I want too, Victoria. I didn't marry you to take over your property or control your life. I married you because I love you and respect you. Whatever we build together, equal partners in everything." "Then we're going to do just fine," Victoria said, smiling. The legal battle with Copper Valley Mining Company dragged on for 6 months. There were hearings and depositions, lawyers arguing back and forth, but Attorney General Harrison was determined to make an example of corporate corruption, and he had the evidence he needed from Victoria's case and several others he had uncovered. In the end, Judge Morrison was removed from the bench and faced criminal charges for accepting bribes. The territorial court ruled that all of his decisions regarding mining claims were invalid, and the properties had to be returned to their original owners. Copper Valley Mining Company was fined heavily, and their territorial charter was revoked. Victoria received official notification that her claim was permanently hers, free and clear. The gold vein she had discovered proved to be even richer than she had initially thought. With Tyler's help, she hired experienced miners and set up proper operations. Within a year, the mine was producing steady income. True to their agreement, Victoria and Tyler ran the ranch and the mine as equal partners. They made decisions together, shared the profits, and built a life that satisfied them both. Victoria loved the work, loved the feeling of building something with her own hands and her own intelligence. And she loved coming home each night to Tyler, to their cabin that now felt like a real home. 2 years after their wedding, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She was both thrilled and terrified. Childbirth was dangerous, especially in remote areas far from doctors, but Tyler was endlessly supportive, and they made arrangements for a midwife from Prescott to come stay with them when the time drew near. Their son was born on a snowy January morning, healthy and loud. They named him Samuel Jackson, after Tyler's father. Tyler cried when he held his son for the first time, this strong, capable man reduced to tears by the tiny bundle in his arms. "He's perfect," Tyler whispered. "You're perfect. I can't believe how lucky I am." Victoria watched her husband with their son and felt her heart overflow with love. She had never imagined this life for herself, had never thought she could have both independence and family, career and love. But here it was. Everything she had fought for and everything she had not known she wanted, all wrapped up together. Samuel grew into a bright, curious toddler who loved following his father around the ranch and listening to his mother's stories about the mine. When he was 2, Victoria became pregnant again. This time their daughter was born in spring, an easy birth that left Victoria feeling strong and grateful. They named her Mary Charlotte, after Charlie's late wife and Tyler's mother. Charlie adored both children and appointed himself honorary grandfather. He carved them toys and told them stories and taught them to be kind and brave. He lived to see Samuel turn 5 before passing peacefully in his sleep one winter night. They buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch, and Victoria planted wildflowers on his grave every spring. The mine continued to produce, and the ranch prospered. Tyler and Victoria expanded their holdings, buying adjacent properties and hiring more workers. They became known throughout the territory as fair employers who treated their workers well and paid honest wages. Young couples starting out would often come to them for advice, and Victoria became an advocate for women's property rights in the territorial legislature. When Arizona became a state in 1912, Victoria was 49 years old. She and Tyler attended the statehood celebration in Phoenix, bringing their children, now grown. Samuel was studying engineering in California and working on mine safety improvements. Mary Charlotte had married a teacher from Prescott and was expecting Victoria's first grandchild. Standing in the crowd as the new state flag was raised, Victoria thought about her journey. From the frightened woman who had been burned out of her claim to the successful businesswoman and mother she had become, it had not been easy. There had been setbacks and struggles. years of hard work and worry. But she had Tyler beside her through all of it, her partner and her love. As if reading her thoughts, Tyler took her hand and squeezed it gently. His hair was silver now, his face lined with years of sun and smiles, but his eyes were the same warm whiskey color she had fallen in love with decades ago. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "About how none of this would have happened if those men hadn't tried to steal my claim. How strange fate is. The worst thing that happened to me led to the best thing." Tyler smiled. "I prefer to think we made our own fate. You fought for what was yours, and I chose to help you. The rest grew from those choices." "Then we made good choices," Victoria said, leaning against his shoulder. "The best," Tyler agreed. They lived many more years together, watching their grandchildren grow, watching the territory they had helped build transform into a modern state. The mine eventually played out, but by then they had diversified their holdings enough that they were secure. They donated money to build a school in Eager and established a fund to help women prospectors file and defend their claims. On their 50th wedding anniversary, Samuel and Mary Charlotte organized a celebration at the ranch. Friends and family came from all over Arizona to honor the couple. Victoria wore a beautiful dress in deep blue, and Tyler wore the same suit he had worn to their wedding, carefully preserved all those years. During the celebration, their youngest grandchild asked Victoria to tell the story of how she and Tyler met. Victoria looked at her husband, at his weathered face and loving eyes, and smiled. "It started with gold," she said, "and ended with something far more precious. It started with me fighting for what was mine, and ended with finding someone who wanted to fight beside me. It started with loss and fear and became love and family and everything I never knew I needed." Tyler took her hand and kissed it gently. "Best thing I ever did was offer you that canteen of water outside the sheriff's office. Second best thing was falling in love with you." "Third best was marrying me," Victoria prompted with a laugh. "No, that was still part of the second. Marrying you was just making official what my heart already knew." They danced together that night, moving slowly to the music while their family watched with love and pride. When the party finally ended and the guests had gone home, Tyler and Victoria sat on their porch and watched the stars come out over the mountains. "Do you have any regrets?" Tyler asked, as he sometimes did. "Not a single one," Victoria answered, as she always did. "You?" "Only that we didn't meet sooner. I would have liked more years with you." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Then we will just have to make the most of the years we have left." And they did. They lived fully and loved deeply until Tyler passed away peacefully at the age of 83, Victoria holding his hand. She mourned him deeply but took comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the life they had built together, in the love that had sustained them through everything. Victoria lived 5 more years, long enough to see Arizona truly flourish, long enough to hold her first great-grandchild. When she finally closed her eyes for the last time, surrounded by family in the house she and Tyler had built together, her last thought was of a young cowboy offering her water on the worst day of her life, and how that simple act of kindness had changed everything. They buried her next to Tyler on the hill overlooking the ranch, under the big sky they had both loved. Their headstone read simply, "Victoria and Tyler Jackson, partners, always." And in the years that followed, their story became legend in Arizona. The tale of a woman prospector who fought for her claim and found love. The story of a cowboy who helped a stranger and gained a wife. A love story born in struggle, strengthened by partnership, and lasting far beyond their lifetimes. Their descendants kept the ranch running for generations, and the story of Victoria and Tyler was passed down to each new child born into the family. A reminder that love is worth fighting for, that partnership matters more than power, and that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to the best things we could never have imagined. The ranch still stands today, a historic site where visitors can learn about early Arizona territory and the remarkable couple who helped shape it. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blows across the mountains, locals swear you can still feel the love that Victoria and Tyler built into every board and nail of that ranch. A testament to the power of two people who chose to face the world together as equals, as partners, as soulmates who found each other against all odds and never let go.